Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. Today, we're going to continue with our country case study series where we zoom in on a specific country. We look at the migration history, the migration policy, and the current migration situation of that country in a three-part series. And today, we're going to be focusing on the current migration situation in Senegal. Of course, if you're interested in those other videos, please do check them out here, the first two videos in the series. And if you're interested in other countries, of course, we have a number of other country series also on the channel, so please do check those out. I'll link those also in the description below. So let's jump in and get started and look at the Senegal situation of migration today. We'll start off by looking at immigrant stocks. So this has to do with the number of Senegalese migrants who are currently abroad. If you're interested in the difference between migrant stocks and migrant flows, you can also check out my video on that here. So immigrants now are about people who are outside of their country of origin. And here you can see between 1990 and 2019 that the number of Senegalese migrants abroad has increased over time. You can also see here the difference between men and women, and we do see more men abroad than women abroad at this time. If we look at the main destinations for Senegalese immigrants, it is mainly in West Africa, but also some European countries, as well as North America. So we can see first here is Gambia, then France, Italy, Spain, the United States of America, Gabon, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Mauritania, Congo, and then a number of other countries. Now, if we look at the flip side and we look at immigrant stocks, so that's people coming into Senegal, you can also see how those numbers have changed over time between 1990 and 2019. We've seen also that it has stayed pretty stable, I would say, between 2000 and 2019 with just a very slight increase. You can also see the difference between men and women here. And what are the top countries of origin that people are coming from that are migrating to Senegal? Well, it's mainly, again, West African, other African countries. So we have Guinea, Mauritania, Malawi, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, France, Gambia, Algeria, Morocco, Benin, and then a number of other countries. But you can see it's very West Africa and very Africa specific in this regard with regard to immigration. Now we can actually look at flows of migrants and, and corridors. Where are migrants going? Where are they coming from? Here we can see Senegal in green, and there are two very clear bilateral migration flows. That is between Senegal and Guinea and between Senegal and Mali. Also, the return migration flows, so that's Senegal to Senegal, is actually larger than each of the bilateral corridors also. So that's also quite interesting here that we're seeing a lot of mobility also back to Senegal. Now, if we look at the reasons for migration, here we can see the main reason for travel, and that's from migration within West and Central Africa, and then the main reason for travel outside of West and Central Africa. And in both cases, you can see that economic reasons for migration are very important. But for travel and for migration within Africa or within West and Central Africa, you can also see that migration for family reasons and rejoining a family member is also quite important. Whereas in both situations, in both migration within West Africa and migration outside of West Africa, you can see that other reasons, access to services, war, conflict, play a very, very minor role in migration decisions. Now, if we look at the reason for labor migration, Senegal has recently emerged as an important labor migration destination country. It has been, of course, overshadowed as a destination by Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Gabon due to oil richness, but Senegal still is a migrant-receiving country in its own right. Heavy movements across the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, is definitely contributing to Senegal's destination status because there is free movement within ECOWAS. If we look at involuntary mobility, kind of more forced migration, we've seen a few groups that have fled because of conflict. So many migrants currently residing in Senegal with refugee status are from Mauritania and are the only refugee population with significant numbers of people also naturalizing in Senegal. Secondly, there are also refugees from the Central African Republic. While refugees from nearby countries such as the Gambia previously resided in Senegal, the majority have been repatriated to their countries of origin through often IOM-backed return programs. So we don't see as many of them now in Senegal today. If we look at reasons for emigration and specifically reasons for labor emigration, we see that Senegal's colonial history with France opened strong channels of movement from Europe in the 20th century. Of course, we discussed that in the history of migration video in Senegal, but especially because of European active recruitment also of Senegalese workers, often seasonal or short-term workers. This recruitment continued even after Senegal's formal independence in the 1960s, and to this day, countries like France, Italy, and Spain remain important destination countries of immigrants from Senegal. There's also the intercontinental movements that are observed alongside circular movements among the economic community of West African states, or again, ECOWAS, since the freedom of movement was established in the late 20th century. So we are seeing plenty of mobility in that regard. Now, if we look at kind of forced migration or involuntary migration from Senegal, we see that while the Statistical and Demographic Agency in Senegal is unsure of how many Senegalese citizens reside abroad as refugees, UNHCR actually estimates 18,000 as of 2018. It is additionally estimated that these migrants left likely due to conflict from the movement of the democratic forces and neighboring conflicts with Mauritania and Gambia in the late 1990s and just still reside abroad today. So there's also plenty of internal migration, and the reasons for that are a lot having to do with economic growth and structural change. Historically, the view of internal migration centered exclusively also on rural to urban movements, but we also have seen in the case of Senegal that it's not only rural to urban movements. We do see plenty of rural to rural movements and also urban to urban movements. Nowadays, we've also seen that in a recent study, actually from 2020, but using data from 2015, we see that 40% of the sample that they looked at in their study were actually internal migrants. So really seeing extremely high numbers of internal mobility. We've also seen quite a lot of movement, of course, to Dakar, also to the capital and the largest urban hub. Now, youth often are overrepresented in internal migration, and youth are actually more prone to rural internal migration and urban to urban movements, typically for temporary periods of time. We do see from a 2020 study that young people from better off households are more likely to move to urban areas. Most trends actually differ based on youth migrants' gender, their father's level of education, the persistence of younger siblings, and households' poverty status. So this does make it a bit difficult to say anything holistically about internal youth migration. Here we can actually see the distribution of internal migrants by host region, and what you can very clearly see is that a very large number, close to half of all of the internal migrants are actually based in Dakar and some of the other large cities in Senegal. If we look at irregular migration, of course, irregular migration, as we've talked about before, is historically very, very difficult to measure. Senegal itself doesn't really have data to report on irregular migration from the country. And most of what we know about irregular migration from Senegal has to do with the regions that the migrants are going to, and in particular, Europe. So Europe takes statistics on this. Here you can see detected irregular Senegalese entries to Europe via the Central Mediterranean route. And this is, of course, from Frontex between 2016 till today. These are some of the numbers that we actually have, and this is again from the European side. If we look now at remittances, you can see here that remittances have increased over time. It looks also like there was a drastic jump between the 1990s and 2010. But some of this probably also comes down to us being able to measure remittances better now in Senegal and having a better idea of what is going on. However, we do still see that remittances have been increasing and are a very important source of external financing for Senegal. As far as GDP is concerned, from 2010 onwards, remittances have made up around 9% of GDP. So really quite important source of external finance for the country. And of course, here you can actually see how remittances have changed since the 1970s till today. Now let's turn our attention to forced migration. First, we can look at internal forced migration, and we can look here at a difference between internally displaced persons because of conflict and violence versus internally displaced persons because of, natural disasters and the environment. And here you can see that in general, we have more people who have been internally displaced because of conflict and violence compared to natural disasters, but we are starting to see environmental reasons become a more important reason for internal displacement in Senegal. If we look at forced migration or refugee stocks in the country, here we see refugees with Senegal as a country of origin and persons having Senegal as a country of asylum. So there is a difference between refugees and asylum seekers. Refugees are people who have actually gained the status of refugee and are allowed to stay in the country, whereas asylum seekers are those who are still within the process trying to gain access to refugee status. Often, though, the reasons for their migration are very similar, forced reasons for that migration. You can see here the number of both refugees and asylum seekers in Senegal between 1990 and 2018, and you can see that the numbers in general have decreased over time. Here we can also see the differences between refugee stocks by their origin and gender, and again, the main countries for refugee stocks are Mauritania and the Central African Republic, but much more Mauritania than the Central African Republic. And you can see here also the mix of males and females, but it is quite equal. An important point with regard to refugees is also repatriations. Repatriations have to do with people going back to their countries of origin once it is deemed safe or once those people choose to do that. Here you can see repatriations since 2016, not very high numbers in general. Now we can also look at trafficking in persons within Senegal. So Senegal is currently a tier 2 country. According to the U.S. Department of State's 2019 Trafficking in Persons Report, or more commonly known as the TIP report. While the country has developed a national action plan to identify cases of trafficking, most of which occur within the country, and to prosecute perpetrators, the State Department cites that the government's failure to operationalize these plans on a large scale is the reasons for its Tier 2 rating. Sex trafficking within Senegal is most prominently identified in the gold mining region. Although the majority of sex trafficking is identified within Senegal, there are instances of cross-border trafficking to nearby countries, and additionally Egypt, parts of Europe, and the Middle East. In the Senegalese mining regions, though, authorities discovered trafficking victims from Ghana and Ukraine who were in sex tourism destinations for European tourists, namely Germans, Belgians, and those from France. The Senegalese government has established a hotline which received over 900 calls during the reporting period of 2018 to 2020 and engaged in public awareness campaigns such as public photo collections depicting forced begging and others. So while they're still working on this, it's definitely clear that Senegal has still quite a way to go to increase their status with regard to actions taken against trafficking. I hope this video gave you a good understanding of the current migration situation in Senegal today. Again, please do check out the other videos in the series on the history of migration in Senegal, as well as the current policies in Senegal. And check out our other videos on the channel. If you like this video, do please make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos that I upload every week. And I do hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.